Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this special transmission on PTV World, where we will be covering the 39th day of the siege of Indian occupied Kashmir by the Indian government, by the fascist Indian government that has in these 39 days only committed atrocities on the hapless people of Indian occupied Kashmir, whether it be no access to food, medicine, hospitals, or the people caged either in their houses, or the leaders who are put under house arrest or put in jails either in Indian occupied Kashmir or in other jails in India. This spate of violence or harassment continues on these people of Indian occupied Kashmir who have only wanted one thing, and that is their right to self-determination. Now, Pakistan has on its side done a lot to let the world know of what India is doing. Whether it has gone on deaf ears or not, in the beginning it did, but slowly and steadily the reactions started coming in, whether it be from the US President Donald Trump, who has time and again reiterated his resolve to mediate talks between India and Pakistan, whether it be the United Nations head, whose spokesperson Stefan Dujarric has time and again also reiterated the UN chief's stance that he wants to see both sides, India and Pakistan, talk about a resolution of this issue in Indian occupied Kashmir, whether it be the lawmakers from all over the world, the latest being two US lawmakers, Pramita Jayapal or James P. McGovern, who have also raised their concern on the atrocities that are being committed in Indian occupied Kashmir, whether it be the OIC, the United Nations Security Council, the UNHCR, also this 58 member countries of the UNHCR who also supported Pakistan's stance on Indian occupied Kashmir, and above all, our government, our Prime Minister, that want to have this issue resolved once and for all, come hell or water, and they want to let the world know of the atrocities that are happening around the Indian occupied Kashmir region, and they want the world to react in a more forcible manner, in a more forceful manner, in an action-oriented manner rather than through words. Tomorrow also, our Prime Minister Imran Khan is holding a rally in Muzaffarabad to show his commitment towards the plight of the people of Indian occupied Kashmir, and people from different walks of life are also going to be joining him tomorrow in this rally. As you remember, in his address to the nation some time back, he had said that he wants a small gathering of all the people from Pakistan during half an hour every Friday for the world to see that Pakistan stands by their Kashmiri brethren. Now, all the efforts that have been made recently by Pakistan and the reactions that have now started to pour in from different quarters around the world, is it enough? Does more need to be done? Will India pay heed to all that is being said by the world bodies and the different countries, the concern that is being shown? To talk about that and more in this first hour, we've been joined by three important guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. On my very right is Lieutenant General retired Talat Masood Saab. Talat Masood Saab is a senior analyst and a frequent guest on our shows. Thank you very much again to have given us the time. Our second guest is a renowned senior journalist, Javed Siddique Saab. Thank you very much, sir, to have given us the time. Pleasure to have you on board. And last but not the least is a foreign affairs expert, Imran Jan Saab. Imran Jan Saab, thank you very much also to have given us the time. Let's begin with you, Talat Masood Saab. Talat Masood Saab, you've seen the latest developments that have come, whether it be from the United Nations Secretary General, whether it be from Donald Trump, whether it be from the OIC, whether it be from the UNHRC, whose 58 countries also supported Pakistan's stance. Is this enough? Are we going in the right direction?
I think we are going in the right direction, because this is what exactly we want, that the consciousness of the world should be raised. The Kashmir problem should be highlighted as much as possible in world forums. But of course, we will have to continue with this effort, because what happens is normally that you take it to a peak and then it subsides and people then start forgetting, because there are other issues also that the world is confronted with. For instance, nowadays if you look at the newspapers abroad, the Hong Kong situation is also in the spotlight, and so are so many others. But I think Pakistan has made every effort that Kashmir remains in the spotlight and is doing whatever it can. But obviously, it is the duty of these human rights organizations, which have been rather responsive, and they are the ones on whom we are also banking at this time. Because other organizations, whether it is the our expectation from world powers like the P5 and all have been somewhat disappointing, because for them expediency is what matters. The relations, the economic and commercial relations are more important for them rather than matters of principles. So I think our thrust is in the right direction, and we are hoping that if these efforts continue, it is quite likely that more and more voices would be heard, and the Indian government will have to be sensitized to the world sort of reaction to their hostility, to their brutalities, and their inhuman sort of treatment of people in Kashmir.
Javed Siddique Saab, above all, this is a humanitarian issue. This is a humanitarian crisis that needs to be resolved at the earliest. And since the 5th of August, this humanitarian issue has gone to a different level altogether due to the atrocities being committed and the curfew and all that is associated with it. Now, the 58 countries that supported the Pakistani stance recently at the United Nations Human Rights Council, and of course, Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab returned from there, and he said that he was very happy about the reaction that the country showed. The reaction, words, action is what we want emanating from the different countries. In the beginning, even the reaction, Siddique Saab, was very mellow, but slowly and steadily the countries are joining in their voices against what is happening in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Do you feel that these voices, this support is going to translate into action in the days to come? What's your point of view?
It must translate into action, undoubtedly. But we have seen that in case of Palestine, the people of Palestine are struggling for the last 7 decades, more than 7 decades. And they've made huge sacrifices to get a land of their own, a country of their own, a state of their own, but they have been denied that. Kashmiris too have been struggling for the last 7 decades. And as we know, the data that has been revealed to the people in the world, that since 1990, almost 100,000 Kashmiris have laid down their lives.
Yes.
And women have been dishonored, and all that happened, and the world remained indifferent to this huge tragedy. This time around, I think hats off to the people of Indian-held Kashmir who have faced this curfew and these restrictions and this repression in Kashmir with great courage, and they have shown a resilience against it. So I think the world has now started paying attention to it. And the most important statement that emerged from Geneva was the statement of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And she has...
Michelle Bachelet.
Yes, and she has said it very clearly, unambiguously, that this is intolerable, that India must lift the curfew, relax the restrictions, and let people walk out of their homes and associate and express themselves. And simultaneously, the Western media, the British, the American media, and other media is taking note of what is happening in Indian-held Kashmir, the atrocities to which the Kashmiris are being subjected by Indian government and Indian forces. They are producing eye-opening reports in their TV channels and in the newspapers. And the world is obviously paying attention to what's happening in Indian-held Kashmir. This is a positive sign. But traditionally, the big powers, the United States of America and the P5, they are not showing the kind of reaction that we were expecting of them. Even though
But weren't we also expecting in another manner for them to show the same kind of reaction that they are showing currently?
Yeah, but UNSC session itself was a big step forward. I mean, after 50 years, the United Nations Security Council
More than
session
50
was
years,
held,
sir.
and they did discuss it, and I think they have expressed their concern on what is happening in Indian-held Kashmir. But as you pointed out in your introductory remarks, that is a fascist government, that Prime Minister Modi is not paying any attention to what the world is thinking, the world is reacting to, and he is continuing with his policy. He is adamant on that. But the Kashmiris, the good thing is that the Kashmiris are resisting, and they have expressed and they have shown to the world that they reject the illegal occupation of Indian forces, and they will continue their struggle for the time to come.
All right. The Kashmiris will continue their struggle for the time to come. That is what Siddique Saab says. I'll quote some of the wordings of Michelle Bachelet, of course, the Human Rights Commissioner. You, of course, know that UNHRC held a summit very recently. Shahid Qureshi Saab was there. 58 countries took Pakistan's stand as far as the human rights atrocities that are being committed in Indian-occupied Kashmir is concerned. Now, she says, and I quote, "I am deeply concerned about the impact of recent actions by the Government of India on the human rights of Kashmiris, including restrictions on internet communications, peaceful assembly, and I continue to urge the governments of India and Pakistan to ensure that human rights are respected and protected." Insurance of protection of human rights, whether it be in Pakistan and India. Let's kind of see the examples of Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Indian-occupied Kashmir. Azad Jammu and Kashmir, where the people have all the rights to do whatever they want, the right to assembly, the right to live their life in the way they want, the right to choose the life that they want. And we compare it to the people in Indian-occupied Kashmir, where their rights are subjugated, especially now since 5th of August after the abrogation of Article 370 and subsequently 35A. Now, when the leaders, whether it be the US President Donald Trump or Michelle Bachelet or the European Union or other fora say that India and Pakistan need to talk, do you feel talks are enough between Pakistan and India? A, will India ever come to talks? B, these statements that emanate from the foreign fora, the organizations that ask both countries to come together and talk, do you feel really that talks are the solution to this issue?
Well, first of all, talks definitely is definitely the solution to every situation, every warring situation that is there in the world. But I want to clarify that the statement that you just quoted, when world powers, especially the United States and other strong countries, when they want to do something in another country, they simply invade them. When they don't want to do something about some issue,
in point, for
example,
example.
Iraq, and I can name so many different countries, they go on covert missions, they spread Stuxnet viruses, and so many different examples that I can give. But when they don't want to do something, then they issue such condemnations. You know, these statements are a very good example, a very good case of nothing but sheer hypocrisy. That's what they are. There's nothing more to it. I just want to mention one thing. I think the mistake that Pakistan is making is not to be, we are not making the right demands from the world community. We are talking about restoration of communication, human rights. We are right now making all the noise about the human rights. The problem with that is that India has annexed a certain real estate. That's a certain part of land that they have annexed. I did not see in the last few days even the 58 countries that issued condemnation or the support that is issued for Pakistan about the rights of the Kashmiri people to live their lives according to their own views and according to their own religion and other such things. What is never mentioned is that India needs to go back to pre-August 5 situation, and then we can talk about the right of people living in that sort of occupation.
That was what Shahid Qureshi Saab had also mentioned some time back.
Right, but right now, nobody's actually, unless I'm missing something, nobody's actually talking about that. I want to explain this perspective, if you allow me.
Please do.
A little bit. There's a show on Netflix nowadays. It's called Money Heist. Actually, it was a Spanish show called La Casa de Papel. They translated that in English. The interesting thing in that show is that the robbers go inside the bank and they make the police outside think that they are actually robbing whatever money is in the bank, but while actually the real plan is to print more money. They're minting more and more money. It's actually running into billions of euros. That is exactly what India is doing right now, because if we, let's say communication is restored, and there was some news report a few days ago that landlines phones are working and people are able to call their distant relatives. What if access to medical supplies in schools is restored? Does that mean everything is okay? I don't think so, because that land is still annexed. That needs to be undone. And so I think these news reports that are coming out that are talking about how India is now restoring landlines and how Pakistan achieved a diplomatic victory because 58 countries condemned Indian moves, I think is actually an Indian victory because it deeply internalizes this new normal of life in post-August 5
All right.
Kashmir.
I'm going to cut you short. We've been joined by Altaf Hussain Wani, a Kashmiri leader way from Geneva. Wani Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Wani Saab, 39th day of suppression of the rights of the people of Indian occupied Kashmir, as if their rights were given. They were not even before, but since the 5th of August, since the removal of Article 370 and subsequently 35A, the rights have further been subjugated to a height of oppression. Now, all the efforts that have been made, you are in Geneva, Shah Mahmood Qureshi have just returned from the United Nations Human Rights Council meeting in which 58 countries reiterated Pakistan's stance as far as what is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir is concerned. All these important moves that have been made by the international community are, in your point of view, these plain statements, or is there more meaning to it this time?
You see, to me as a Kashmiri, I would like to see the end of lockdown in Kashmir. I would like to see the end of communication blockage in Kashmir. I would love to talk to my parents in Kashmir. This is what every Kashmiri looks for. But at the same time, we have to see when you talk of the international diplomacy, we could see that in Geneva, I could see lots of things happening around. As you mentioned, 60 countries aligned with, there has a joint statement asking government of India to lift the curfew, to end the lockdown, and to end the human rights abuse in Kashmir, to abide by the recommendations of the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights, and which also states that in any of the negotiations between India and Pakistan or different future of Kashmiris, the voices of people of Kashmir must be taken into account. So the international community, I think, it's a big win when 60 countries show their concern. They condemn such acts and ask the government of India to do something. But we have seen over the period of time, the Indian government has become so arrogant. Their diplomacy is also here. They are panting the same, the old-fashioned, their arguments that they have the fear of cross-border terrorism and everything is normal in Kashmir and blah, blah, but what they have been talking over the years. They are talking the same at this point in time. But I could see the international community is not buying the argument of government of India at this time, and they are being asked to look into the human rights situation in occupied Kashmir and the acts that Indian government took on the 5th of August. They are unilateral. They are against the spirits of the UN resolutions, though they do talk openly of UN resolutions, but they do say that these unilateral actions on Kashmir are not acceptable, and the way the government of India has done it and the way the Modi government is pursuing the policy of Hindutva in Kashmir and elsewhere in India, that has been a concern of the international community here at Geneva. The visit of foreign minister, it was a very hectic visit. I could see the foreign minister delivering a very powerful speech in the council, meeting lots of people, meeting the diplomats of different countries and making a strong case for Pakistan.
Now, speaking of the strong case that has been made by Pakistan on the different international fora, whether it be the OIC, whether it be at the UNHRC, or whether it be at the United Nations. Now, when you see different leaders asking for mediation, for talks between India and Pakistan on this issue to kind of remove the bottlenecks that exist between both countries, the Indian side remains adamant that it does not want to talk, and it's, as you said very rightly, diverting the attention towards saying that, oh, there are other issues of terrorism or terrorism-related issues. Do you feel they will ever be serious enough, or do you think a time will come when the pressure will be so great on India that they will have no other option but to go for talks and to relieve the pressures that they are currently putting on the people of Indian occupied in Kashmir, and ultimately go for a plebiscite in Kashmir?
You see that the way that things are shaping, there are only two options left. The first option is for the government of India to decide to look into its international stature the way she wants to be the member of UN Security Council. She has to improve its human rights record. She has to take in cognizance the recommendation of the international community, which she is not taking. On the other hand, we see the situation in Kashmir, the way the situation in Kashmir is aggravating, the way the pressure is in Azad Kashmir, the young people are very eager to cross over the line of control. They want to cross over to help their brethren in Kashmir. And on the other hand, we see the mounting pressure on the line of control from the Indian side. They are firing on the population in Azad Kashmir. And we see only two options left for India. Either the Indians will go for a war, they will have, as their army chief has said, we are ready, we are waiting for the orders of their boss Modi, or they will have to surrender to the international pressure, which is coming over there. The Indian international pressure is mounting on India to undo all that what they have done and to improve their human rights record in Kashmir and talk to Pakistan and talk to people of Kashmir to resolve the Kashmir issue. We could see that at the national and international level, when somebody says about mediation or facilitation, we have seen the government of India always refusing it, says, no, we are not going to talk anyone. But at the same breath, they say, we and Pakistan will mediate it, we will negotiate it bilaterally. But when it comes to Pakistan, it says, no, we are doing it unilaterally, we have to do it, it's our internal matter. So I think the world is now very much serious about how India is pursuing the Kashmir and how they say it is unilateral, but that is the internal matter of India. But I could see the world doesn't look so. They see it is an international matter. It is a matter that should be resolved as early as possible.
All right, Wari Sahib, also you talked about the different world powers. You said that the world powers are finally realizing the reality of the issue that exists in Indian occupied Kashmir. Now, you know, the world powers or any countries made up of people. Now, you're in Geneva, you've been to other countries as well. What do the people in these countries say? What do the people in Geneva and in other countries that you visited, what is their opinion about what is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir? Are they well informed about the situation, or are they only informed from Indian perspective of the things that are happening there?
You know, believe me, this time when I was in Geneva in 2016, the things were shaping in Kashmir, and also this time when I'm in Geneva, I could see the people, the ordinary people in Geneva, all the people, the NGO represented in the United Nations, the diplomats who met me, with whom I have sought the appointment, or who know me. They would come to me, they would tell me about what's happening in Kashmir. Have you got any contact with your family? Is there everything okay? The reports are coming, they are very serious, they are very grave. I think the international community, or as a general public at international level, is very much aware what is happening in Kashmir. But at the same time, you know, the governments, they have their own ways of doing the things. So they are dealing the matter with a different way. But at the streets in Geneva, I could see the ordinary people know about what is happening in Kashmir, what the India has done. They know the meaning of 40 days of lockdown. They just could not imagine that the country which calls itself a democracy could do to the people in this 21st century and took them to the medieval times.
All right, thank you very much, Altaf Hussain Wari Sahab. You joined us from Geneva and you gave us your opinion, of course, from what's happening in Geneva and also the pulse of the people in Geneva, as you said, the change that has happened between 2016 and 2019. Tarat Masood Sahab, we've heard Altaf Hussain Wani Sahab. He talked about two options very clearly. One was war that India wants, that he talked about the Indian Army Chief. He said he's just waiting for orders. And the other is that India will succumb under the foreign pressure. Which option seems more likely to you?
Well, I don't think war is an option even for India. The military commander may talk like that. But I think the politician knows the implications of
But
war.
you know, the Indian Defence Minister also talked about the no first use of nuclear weapons. You remember the statement that he had made?
Yeah, but talking of no first use is a different matter to saying that we will go to war. Because that means that, you know, we are going to go to war, we are prepared for a conventional war, we are prepared for a nuclear war, and then what do you gain out of it?
Exactly.
The point is that you are taking a certain position on Kashmir. We are taking a certain position on Kashmir. The people of Kashmir are wanting, you know, their own freedom and they are wanting to get rid of the yoke of the Indian hegemony. And so these are different positions. For that, if you want a war and then go into a nuclear war, that doesn't solve the problem.
Exactly. That exacerbates the problem, in fact.
It aggravates the problem, involves 2/3 of the world. So I don't think that is really the answer or is as sort of a practical solution to anything. And that is different, that there will be warmongering and there will be threats and there will be all sorts of
false flag operations or the threats of false flag operations that are
Pakistan is fully prepared
people
for
have
all
also
that.
highlighted. Yes.
We have to be prepared for all that because you never know in a situation as tense as this, anything could happen. But
at any time.
Anything. But the point is that whatever irrational behavior or whatever sort of hostile behavior India has does not mean that you know, irrationality will go to the extent of waging a war which will involve the whole at least 2/3 of the world.
All right, that is a question mark that still remains, the irrationality, Javed Siddique Saab, of the decisions that could be or would be taken in the days to come from the Indian side, given the spate of statements, the aggressive statements that are emanating from the Indian side. Of course, they understand what they have done and they are trying to cover it up one way or the other. But to which extent, in your point of view, Javed Siddique Saab, will they go to cover what they've done since the 5th of August?
They could go to any length. I think they did it before in Pulwama incident. You know, they stage managed that thing and they started a war with Pakistan, you know, and world has witnessed what happened after this Pulwama drama. So Modi, the Prime Minister of India, the BJP, the ruling party of India, and their attitude towards the neighbors and their attitude towards Kashmiris, and not only towards Kashmiris, but other minorities. Look what have they done to us people in Assam, the Muslims living in Assam.
Exactly.
So they could go to any length. They could take any risk. Although I think the world community, particularly the big powers, USA, Russia, China and others, probably they must be and they are exercising their influence on Modi and their maneuvering that war should not be there in the subcontinent because they understand the implications. It will have a very devastating impact in this region, which is the most populous region of the world. And then they are fearing that this, if there is a conventional war between India and Pakistan, will spin out of control and could result
because
in
both countries are nuclear powers after all.
So the Prime Minister gave an interview to the New York Times and a couple of other newspapers, and they have told the world that if war begins between these two countries on the issue of Kashmir, it may not remain confined to only conventional war. So the message is loud and clear, and the world knows it very well. So, but I think we should not be ignorant of the fact that given the mindset of Prime Minister Modi, who is ready to do anything. I mean, he made a big miscalculation here, I think. because he thought that by imposing curfew and by imposing these restrictions on Kashmiris, and things will be all right.
But doesn't he know what happened after 2016, after the martyrdom of Burhan Wani, how the whole thing escalated, in fact, after...
Exactly. And this gang of three, Prime Minister Modi, his Interior Minister Amit Shah, and Ajit Doval, they are the architect of
the
this
troika.
Exact troika. They are the architect of the current, situation and operation in Indian held Kashmir. But they have failed, and the Kashmiris have proven to the world that they will never ever accept the domination, illegal occupation of Indian forces. They were fighting with them. They were fighting with the Indian army through the stones, with stones.
Yes.
And finally, they inducted more troops in Indian Kashmir, the most militarized zone in the world, and they brought new army, and now they have actually subjected the Kashmiris to unprecedented torture.
There are different accounts of that on different...
And the world media is reporting it.
Yes.
CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, independent newspaper of UK, Telegraph and others, they have published
For the first
reports.
time, we see all the international bigwigs talking openly about this issue.
The New York Times and the Washington Post, they have all commented on this situation.
They have.
And I think the world is well aware of it, and it has, there's a consciousness among the important countries of the world that the situation is very precarious and could go out of hand.
The situation is very precarious, Imran Jan Sahab, but at the same time, there are different levels of war that happen. There's the conventional war, then there's, I hope which never happens, the nuclear war, and then there's the hybrid war that happens through different forms of media or different forms of manipulation that happens. You've seen that as a foreign affairs expert on how different countries manipulate the people, the different organizations or even media for their own benefit. Who has been successful this time after the 5th of August? Because we know the international media this time has really come out openly in defense of the people of Indian occupied Kashmir. But as far as the hybrid warfare is concerned, is that enough from the perspective of the people of Indian occupied Kashmir?
As far as going around the world and talking about Kashmir and resurrecting this almost dead issue on a global scale is concerned, Pakistan has absolutely won that battle. Pakistan has made people realize that the global media, the leading publications like the New York Times, Washington Post, and other such publications are talking about this issue. If letting the world know about this issue is concerned, is the standard, then Pakistan is winning. But in my view, in my humble view, unfortunately, that is not the standard of victory in this situation. Because when someone commits a crime, you don't lecture them about how much immoral that was. You actually punish them. And India is a state that doesn't pay attention to morals, or especially under Prime Minister Modi, who was a butcher of Gujarat. Remember, he was banned from entering the United States. But then he won the election and
he addressed the United Nations General Assembly.
Exactly, and realpolitik and interests as what happens on a global scale that dictated, and of course he was allowed to come, and as you mentioned, he even gave that speech. Now, so I mean, what I'm trying to, the point that I'm trying to make is that every time something bad happens in Pakistan, let's say some journalist gets caught or goes to jail, or God forbid someone kills them, or if a non-Muslim is prosecuted or persecuted in this country, the whole world comes to know instantly, noise is made about it, everyone starts lecturing Pakistan about freedom of speech and religious freedom and all such goodies. When it comes to Kashmir, why do we have to wake them up and go them and tell them, hey, look, this is what's happening in this part of the world? Why do we have to actually let them know? Why cannot they publish op-eds themselves in their major newspapers?
Because they don't want to. I mean, the simple
answer is they don't want to. That's exactly the point that I'm making. It doesn't happen that way. Like, as long as advocacy is concerned, yeah, Pakistan is winning that battle. But this wouldn't happen with that alone. It will happen with much more. And the statement of Rajnath Singh, the defense minister of India, that was mentioned about the no first use doctrine of watch by that he said we will reconsider. In my view, again, that was just a ploy. That was just a statement that they wanted to give this impression of, look, we are such irrational, crazy people, we'll go to war. Because right around that time, the closed-door meeting in the United Nations Security Council was happening, discussing Kashmir for the first time in 50 years. They wanted to convey to them not to decide against them.
But Imran Jan Sahab, aren't they irrational? Haven't they proven to the entire world that they are an irrational government, and the people who are spearheading the Troika, as Siddiq Saab also pointed out, aren't they irrational, aren't they irresponsible, because the way they are taking this issue forward is going to escalate?
So let me explain that. If their behavior and if their image on a global scale is concerned, yes, they do look irrational and crazy. But in my humble view, if I look at their actions of how they're going step by step, first annexing a land, then giving out the NFU, no first use statement, I think they're acting very rationally. This is a very calculated approach to annexing that part of the land and making it a part of India. I just want to mention one thing here.
All right, go ahead.
Because I do not know what the highest echelons of power in this country are thinking. If it's about repeating what happened in Afghanistan with the Soviet Union, if just like the United States were baiting the Soviets to come to Afghanistan and destroy their economy by buying so much guns, making so much guns, and then eventually they were, defeated and the Soviet Union broke down. If that is the case, if that is the strategy that Pakistan is having to bait the Indians, because they already increased their troop level from 700,000 to close to 1 million now. That's the world's most densely militarized zone, as was just mentioned here. If the strategy is to bleed their economy in Kashmir and make Kashmir the next Afghanistan for India, then it would make sense.
Or the next Palestine for that case.
Exactly. Then it would make sense. But if that is not the case, I think it is India that is moving very rationally. Their steps are very calculated. They are the ones who have annexed that land, and they're now, moving forward with whatever they have, more plans they have. The richest Indian, Mukesh Ambani, talked about investing close to 40 billion, if I'm not wrong, dollars in Kashmir. So these moves, these approaches don't sound
are calculated, in your point of view, are very calculated and are very rational, irrespective of what the world might be saying. Everything has been thought of beforehand, which brings me to the following point. Talat Masood Saab, if all of the moves that India is doing or making has been calculated or have been calculated much beforehand, with all the implications and complications, of course, being also thought of, what do you feel is India wanting to make in occupied Kashmir another Palestine? Because, of course, the subjugation of Article 370 and 35A implicate that they want to bring in Hindus and populate them in about 2-3 years' time. They will say, oh, all right, let's have that plebiscite done. And when that plebiscite will be done, there will be more Hindus than the Muslims in that period, because they've repealed that article and now they can go and buy lands and do whatever they want in Indian occupied Kashmir. Is that what they want to do, in fact?
No, I don't think so. I think they just want to absorb Kashmir in the Indian Union. They think that by sheer force they will be able to do it initially, and then they will be able to make the people of Kashmir accept it forcefully. And
but that has never happened. I mean, that has never.
Let me finish. You see, their thinking. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's rational. I'm not saying it will succeed. You asked me a question that how they are thinking. My view is that they are thinking that initially there would be a reaction from all these forums and so on. So they are not so blind that they would not have thought that these reactions would emanate. But the fact remains is that they thought that the governments of these major countries are with them and they will not speak out, and they are not speaking out. And they think that they will be able to suppress the people of Kashmir, integrate them in India, and they will say that, well, there are many countries in the world in which there are a lot of minorities. There will be a Muslim minority in India, and the Kashmiris, there will be certain portions in which there will be a majority of Muslims, but it does not mean that it should not be an integral part of India, like what it is in China, what it is in Russia, what it is in, they can give 100 examples. I think this is, I'm trying to only project as to how their
They are
mind is
thinking.
working. Not that it will succeed or it will fail, but there are implications. It could fail because of it would depend on how the resistance goes and how the world community reacts to that. So there are many ifs as far as the future is concerned. Of course, Pakistan's wholehearted support to the Kashmir struggle is also a vital factor in not only in terms of raising the issue internationally, but also inspiring the people of Kashmir and giving them hope that there is Pakistan which is standing behind them. So there are several factors there. So I would say that they have gambled, and they have, and it's a well thought out sort of a policy, and they think that they would be able to integrate this sort of upheaval which is taking place after some time would subside. The world will have other problems to look at, and its focus will.
But it has happened in the past.
It has happened. So I think so. Now our strategy should be to sort of keep it alive. Our strategy should be to make sure that the Kashmiris know that Pakistan is fully backing their movement and all that.
All right.
So there are many ifs and
all right.
many times.
All right. Many ifs, many buts. Javed Siddique Sahab, when we talk of the resistance, whether it be from the world bodies, whether it be in the media, or whether it be by the people themselves and who are under subjugation, under oppression in Indian occupied Kashmir, will this resistance escalate with time? Because you can't kind of hold on to, the bubble will burst. Yes. Whenever the pressure is relieved, whenever they take out the curfew.
The litmus test would be when the Indians lift curfew and other restrictions, what will be the conduct and reaction of the Kashmiris living there? My view is that the Kashmiris will come with stronger resistance against the occupying forces, occupying army of India, because they have shown that in these 39 days, they have opened up schools, they have approached the parents that they should send their kids to schools, and they refused. They have offered double salaries to the teachers to come to schools and teach. Mostly, most of them are Kashmiris. They have refused to go to the schools and teach. And that resistance is actually building up with every passing day. And I don't think it will be easy to suppress Kashmiris, although the big powers, they have been able to do it. I mean, the Israelis are doing it with the same with the Palestinians. We have so many other examples of the world, but I don't think it will be very easy for the Indians to suppress this resistance of Kashmiris, and they will not accept it because they are mentally not prepared to be a part of India.
All right.
And even one sign, very important sign, is that the pro-Indian politicians like Farooq Abdullah, Umar Farooq, his son, Umar, and Mehbooba Mufti, and the kind of people who were pro-Indians and who always supported New Delhi, and they supported their rule in Indian-held Kashmir, they are in the forefront of resisting the Indian occupation now.
Right.
And Sora, the place where the pro-Indian politicians are living, is now the center of resistance in the current situation.
Although that's a very interesting point of view, Javed Siddique Sahab, that you've pointed out, that Sora, which was basically a pro-Indian area in Kashmir, is now becoming the center of resistance.
So,
yes, please do.
Sorry, and that clearly indicates that even the Indians have left the pro-India politicians or pro-India population of India with no option but to rise against them.
All right, very interesting. There is no option left, ladies and gentlemen, but to rise against this tyranny, this fascism that the current Indian government is pursuing, especially on the region of Indian occupied Kashmir. It is also translating to other areas such as Assam, but that is another discussion for another day. At this time, we are concentrating on the hapless people of Indian occupied Kashmir, 39th day, ladies and gentlemen, that is happening. But as my panelists have said, the resistance is going on. It is not going to end. It is only going to escalate. And with the political, moral and diplomatic help of Pakistan, this will only help the people of Indian occupied Kashmir. Umar Khalid Butt bids you farewell from this first half of this transmission. I thank my guests, Lieutenant General retired Talib Masood Saab, Javed Siddiq Saab and Imran Jan Saab, for their points of views on the national and international front, on how people might be thinking nationally, internationally, how this could be resolved, how this could go forward in whichever way possible. Allah Hafiz.